What's going on, everybody? It is that time again. The Sooners Illustrated Podcast, episode 180 on this Friday, June 6th, 2025. Josh Callaway, Collin Kennedy with you. 85 days from the kickoff of the 2025 Oklahoma football season. With you on a Friday afternoon. Lots of recruiting stuff to get into. A huge recruiting visit weekend coming up for Oklahoma. Obviously, Bowe Bentley will be in there. We will, of course, discuss. And Collin's been at the first two Brent Venables football camps. We'll get into that a little bit as well. So a kind of tight here recruiting show on a Friday. Full disclosure, so Collin is you're at TCU camp right now. If you're not watching on YouTube, Collin is basically in a kitchen type of room, it seems.
Yes.
It has a printer in it.
I really want to shout out the TCU football staff for being so courteous, because my idiot self has positioned my podcast operation in half kitchen, half workroom. And I was telling Josh before we hopped on the air here, some very friendly TCU staffer saw me, was very courteous, let me do my thing, but was making lunch while I'm trying to do this. So I love the TCU football staff. Shout out to them, though, for putting up with me today.
We've done some shows with you in various locations over the last couple of years. This, that's why the show's gonna be a little tired today. You're at a camp out there at TCU. We didn't know if we were gonna be able to do this, but Collin found a spot, so we're gonna pack it in some necessary info, and hopefully this is a one-time thing. Collin going with a microwave as his background, but
yeah,
we make it work. That's how we do here. We roll with the punches.
We grind for the people. That being said, if someone needs to print something, maybe the rosters for the next session at camp, you know what the noise in the background is, folks.
That's what the noise in the background is. Absolutely. All right. So without further delay, we'll get into it. We have just a few things we definitely wanted to. That's why we wanted to make a point to get the show, because it's a big recruiting visit weekend coming up for Oklahoma. That's obviously kind of getting going today. I assume Collin will get into it, obviously, over the next couple of days. Let's go right to the top with the headliner, Bowe Bentley, right? We talked about Bowe Bentley at length for the last several months. It's kind of shifted from being almost like a Bowe Bentley, Jaden O'Neal saga to just kind of being the Bowe Bentley sweepstakes a little bit. He went to LSU last weekend. He's going to be in Norman this weekend. Obviously, here we go. And we talked about this a few weeks ago. Your sense is that you think it'll probably be wrapped up kind of, don't want to put a timeline on necessarily, but soon-ish, after this weekend. Well, temperature check. I mean, obviously, how, from your estimation, how the visit to Baton Rouge went, and I guess how huge this weekend is, obviously, for Oklahoma with this coveted 26 quarterback coming in here at Mr. Bentley.
Yeah, we are beginning kind of the crash course portion of this saga. Obviously, Bowe Bentley, LSU hosts him. Oklahoma getting ready to bring him in this weekend, like Josh mentioned, but we're also kind of in the middle of Jaden O'Neal sort of half reaffirming his commitment, while also still preparing for the Florida State official visit coming up in 2 weeks. So this is it. Like Josh mentioned, this is where it all kind of comes to its peak. And I think entering the weekend, talking to a lot of folks, I can't really give you much more than obviously LSU's feeling really good, really good.
Right.
But I don't know that in Oklahoma's eyes, it's anything that cannot be countered. Now, whether or not that ends up being true, we're obviously all going to find out together, Oklahoma and LSU included. But I think that LSU knocked that visit out of the park. I have heard that Oklahoma has one heck of an OV plan put together for Bowe. I think they're very optimistic about what can be accomplished here with one of the top quarterbacks in the country. And I was talking about this with some folks at a Norman the other day. It's also kind of one of those moments in time where, in The Office, I believe it's Dwight Schrute who says something to the effect of like nostalgia, one of the human race's greatest weaknesses. Yeah, like this is a guy that grew up a big fan of Oklahoma. I believe his grandmother is a diehard OU fan from what he was telling me at the Navy All-American Bowl. And so kind of the emotional feel almost brings you to a point where this is kind of like call your bluff territory, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And so, look, I've said it before, I'll say it again. We were never really going to know where things stood in this recruitment until this 2-week stretch hit, arguably 3-week. And basically going in, as you would think, LSU kind of has the pole position, is at least setting the pace. It's up to Oklahoma to catch up. And I do think that OU feels really good about its ability to kind of make this almost a photo finish.
Yeah, look, I mean, the LSU visit going well, we knew it would, right? We knew it would. LSU is obviously a powerhouse program. Baton Rouge is awesome. Great facilities, SEC. They have a ton of momentum right now. The fact that the visit went well doesn't surprise me or anyone, I don't think, in the slightest. But we talked about it going in. Was there a fear of, maybe it goes so well that he doesn't even make it to Norman? So at least you avoided that, right? I mean, he's coming to Norman this weekend. So you've at least gotten that. You're going to get your crack at him, which is a nice thing. I think, too, we talked about it. Obviously, if we listen to the show every week, but if you missed it, Bowe was supposed to come later this month and basically have his own weekend, right? And he moved it up, and he's now coming on this weekend with a lot of other star-studded players that we're going to get into in just a second. That could end up being a positive thing. I mean, being around all these other guys that are obviously visiting Oklahoma, Oklahoma's interested in, they're presumably interested in Oklahoma. It could work out really well all around for the Sooners. Maybe not, but, we'll see how it all shakes out. And it's obviously a huge deal because we talked about it. I don't want to speak for Jaden O'Neal because who knows what this all has been like for him. I have to assume it's been weird. Could that be salvaged if they don't get Bowe? I don't know. He could probably be the only one who could really tell you. But, we talked about it a lot. If they don't get Bowe and Jaden moves on, where does that leave them? And so this is a huge weekend. This is probably the biggest weekend it would feel, and Collin can speak on it way better than me, but this visit in particular, this one guy feels like as important of a weekend as they've had in a while. And certainly the biggest of the young Ben Arbuckle tenure here this weekend. You got to find a way to lock this guy up. They have to.
No, this is arguably the most pivotal week stretch for the 2026 cycle in relation to Oklahoma, because the other part of this too, kind of like what you were mentioning with the shifting of the schedule, you get Bentley around other guys, but Oklahoma's also getting the last word. I mean, I certainly don't want to skip over that because, talking to folks, I do believe that they feel that's a very important layer to this. They are thrilled to have that kind of last word in this recruitment where originally that was not the case. And LSU puts together one heck of a pitch. I mean, their recruiting department is very good at what they do. And I think OU having the ability to kind of counterpunch, like I talk about it all the time, the counterpunch concept in recruiting is never discussed enough. And to have that opportunity to face whatever is in front of you head on, I mean, that's invaluable, especially when you're talking about the most important position in quarterback recruiting. And so I think that's the other part of this too, is this being that final weekend. As far as the timeline, kind of like what you were hinting at, like Bowe gets it. Like he knows that he's kind of, for lack of a better term, maybe a little bit behind the 8 ball in terms of like putting a class around himself, because that's such a big part of this. And so for OU to not only have that last go at this guy, but then to know that he's going to want to get something done fairly soon to start helping that program recruit, that makes you feel even better about that last visit. Right. And so, I think that the other part of this too, very quickly, like you mentioned, man, like this is Ben Arbuckle's time, and I'm excited to see what he does with the opportunity. They have a lot of other quarterback staffers in that building as well. John Kusecki, Blaze Benson, Colt Garrett. They are investing in the quarterback position, and Ben Arbuckle has invested a lot in Bowe Bentley. It's time to close the deal, and I'm excited to see what this relationship shows in the next few days as they work out whatever the next steps might be.
Yeah, Ben Arbuckle took a swing here. They probably, even if he and obviously he does, but you fall in love with Bowe Bentley. We talked about how he comps to John Mateer and all of that. He seems like a perfect fit for Ben Arbuckle. When you have a guy like Jaden O'Neal already, committed, the safer play would have been, to not pursue another quarterback and to kind of just court Jaden O'Neal and be like, this is our guy. But Ben Arbuckle and his staff are taking the shot here. They're taking the risk, right? The gamble of chasing another quarterback. And if it pays off, great. If it doesn't, and we talked about a few times, where does that leave you in 26? So huge weekend. Collin's all over this stuff, and we'll obviously have a lot to talk about. Collin, you can real quickly. I mean, I don't want to speak for you. You've mentioned in the past you think that probably this gets wrapped up pretty quick, right? I mean, after this weekend, I don't know if you want to necessarily put a timeline on it, but in the relatively near future, Bowe will make a call here after this visit. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is an emotional decision, so you never want to cap it with a specific number. But kind of like what I mentioned earlier, this is something that Bowe probably understands. He's a little bit behind the race in terms of being the quarterback who helps put a class together. And I do think that, kind of reading the tea leaves, he wants to be able to help the program he's around recruit at the back end of June, whenever you have like all these huge OV weekends to close out the month of June. And so, again, I don't want to speak for Bowe, but just context clues and some of the stuff, the rumblings, like I think he wants to be able to be a presence, a very relevant presence around the final weekend of OVs as a committed prospect. And we'll see if that tracks from here.
Gonna be interesting. Obviously, big weekend. We'll have a lot to talk about next week. And if Bowe does make a decision before Collin and I meet with you again next week, which we got camps and stuff next week, so we might go earlier in the week, maybe Wednesday. I don't know. We'll figure it all out. It's kind of a moving target right now. But if Bowe makes a decision before Collin and I can do our next show next week, we probably will have some sort of quick instant reaction show on the YouTube and in the podcast feed. So keep an eye out for that. Whenever that becomes a thing, maybe next week, maybe not. We'll see. We'll be ready. We'll be keeping our ears and eyes peeled after this weekend for sure.
All right, Josh, lead us into the next segment, and I'm going to check the door real quick because I think someone may have knocked. Go ahead, be a professional.
All right, go for it. So yeah, we're shifting over. So on Sooners Illustrated for our VIP members, I plug this all the time. Collin does a phenomenal job of when they have these big visit weekends. There always is a full list of the visitors on Sooners Illustrated and 24/7 Sports. Collin always gets that in a timely manner. So it's just the easiest way to keep up with like who's coming to town. It's all right there for you for our VIP members on Sooners Illustrated. This is a big weekend. Obviously, Bowe Bentley is the headliner for obvious reasons, but there are a number of other big prospects that are going to be in town. Collin, as always, don't expect you to go through the whole list, but some of the names in particular that you think this weekend is especially important for, or just they're a really good player and you want to make note of them that they're going to be in town this weekend, however you want to take it.
Yeah, the guy that I really want to start with is Davian Gross, the high 4-star athlete out of Frisco Lone Star. Obviously, Frisco Lone Star is a high school that has treated OU well from a recruiting perspective, and Gross, this in theory has been a recruitment that Oklahoma should be able to capitalize on if wanted. But also, I do think that this is a process that's maybe taken a little bit of a pivot. So what I mean by that, Davian Gross, I've written a number of stories about this, but his mother is from Guthrie, Oklahoma, and most of Davian's family on his mother's side still lives in the state of Oklahoma, and they're all OU fans. And you better believe that they have been putting in the work with Davian Gross, trying to convince him to make that commitment. He told me at the Navy All-American Bowl, it's largely bags of Swedish fish, which I have a sense that Oklahoma's going to be able to do a little bit better than a few bags of candy on the official visit. But while this thing is played out and Oklahoma's been navigating the 26 cycle, Baylor, who has been very good in 2026 to this point, has made this one really interesting. And the Bears get the last OV for Gross at the back end of June. And so that kind of feels like closing territory for a guy who, in theory, OU should be 100% leading for. Now, ultimately his decision, right? And family ties are one thing, but personal feel is another. I do think that this is someone who fits Oklahoma not only off the field, but on the field. He's kind of, I've said it before and I'll say it again, in the era of positionless football, hard to do better than Davian Gross right now. And I think that with the way that wide receiver recruiting has gone at times, it's a little bit interesting, kind of the ebbs and flows. Not that it's been necessarily bad or great. It's just been very interesting to track. Davian Gross to me would be the first name to mention. And I am very interested to track the way that this weekend's OV goes, because again, should be someone that OU's setting the pace for, but now it's also kind of like Oklahoma's really going to have to fight to catch up and almost retake a lead with Baylor hovering over this process.
Yeah, Gross, big time athlete. He's a top 100 player for us at 24/7 Sports. So is he? You might have just mentioned it. Wide receiver for Oklahoma. They're kind of looking for him. So I mean, big time player. Is a guy that if you're a regular listener, viewer of the show on YouTube, that has come up a lot. And so, a big one. Actually, getting him in town this weekend, obviously, and with Bowe Bentley too. I mean, that's where I'm kind of talking before. Like that could help, right? So, big one.
Yeah. Want to throw in Jaden Pettit, 4-star wide receiver out of the state of Florida. This is a process that's kind of stepped into the spotlight over the last few months. Like I mentioned earlier, wide receiver, the ebbs and flows there on the trail. Jaden Pettit to me is someone who, as I've kind of made phone calls out there, feels like a guy that OU could cover ground pretty quickly for. And he's kind of what Jim Nagy is looking for. 6'4", 195 pounds, big perimeter threat. And obviously they like to go in there into the Southeast and grab guys when they can to continue to strengthen those bonds out there. Pettit certainly feels like someone that it's viable to do so, especially because he does have, I believe, Miami on the back end of June, but I have heard that the Canes have a pretty stacked receiver board currently. And so where exactly Pettit or a number of other guys fits in is still to be worked through. And so that's kind of the stuff you're looking for when recruiting, is situations where you can capitalize on an opportunity, right? And so Pettit to me is someone who I personally am very interested in how this goes. Come on in. Do you want to say hi on the podcast? We're just talking football recruiting.
Oh, nice.
We have a TCU staffer coming in. What's your name?
Hi, I'm Shauna.
Shauna, appearing on the podcast. Yay. Shout out to Shauna.
Shout out. Yeah,
we're in the way, so we apologize.
Oh, no worries. I'll get out of your way.
Moving right along here while Shauna continues to make me feel hungry. Danny Odom, cornerback. Guy that is from Pennsylvania. You like how, remember when I was in AT&T Stadium and we had like 3 random people just walk through?
Yes. That's what I was thinking of. That's what this comps to, is the AT&T Stadium show.
Gaylord College at the University of Oklahoma prepared us for moments like this. Just go with the flow. It's live television.
100%.
Moving right along. Danny Odom, 4-star cornerback, another guy down in the state of Florida. So, Josh, this one really interests me because I've seen Danny Odom in person. I've been able to watch him in the 7-on-7 circuit. I think he's one heck of a football player. He is a Pennsylvania guy who moved to the Southeast, and he's got the ideal blend of, like, I guess Pennsylvania's Northeast, right? Like the hard-nosed Northeast with the aggressive, swaggered Florida mentality. And one thing we have not talked about, I got to give credit where credit is due. My buddy Josh McCushion over at Sooner Scoop, we were talking ball as we do, and he was like, hey man, cornerback, what's going on there? I was like, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, the board there is pretty wide open. And Danny Odom and then Derek Johnson II is a corner from out west. They are expected to be on campus this weekend. You know, I couldn't tell you who I think ends up in OU's class at corner in 2026. I don't know that it's necessarily either one, but this is kind of the opportunity for them to try and get that done. Mm-hmm. So tracking the corners on campus this weekend. Tyler Ruxer is another one I want to quickly mention. The tight end. Obviously, OU has Ryder Mix, but they want to bring in two. We talk a lot about tight ends. Oh, come on in. You need something? No, do your thing. Okay. Do you want to appear on the podcast as well? Sure. Shauna, say what's up. What's your name?
Howdy, Chloe Shelby here. I'm with Student Athlete Development from TCU.
Boom. We've got another TCU employee hopping on the pod. I love it.
TCU pump. Bet you weren't getting a lot of TCU pump on this podcast today.
People weren't. We love TCU here. They're putting up with my crap today. You know what I mean? Yeah. So Tyler Ruxer, tight end out of the Midwest, having his recruitment heat up a little bit, but he's going to take his OV this weekend, and he has a decision date set for July the 5th. I would keep an eye on this weekend as kind of a tone setter, and then Deacon Schmidt is the guy that I think I'm going to close this out with. So we've talked a little bit about the lack potentially of offensive tackle talent in the 2026 cycle, specifically in the region. Yeah. Right. Deacon Schmidt is a guy that they feel can play tackle. And I mean, arguably he's the most viable or sensible option there at that spot.
6'5".
And yeah. I mean, he's got inside out potential, man, you know, and that's something that Bill Beanbo values immensely. And then, like I mentioned, they're kind of in a force your hand situation where it's just not prime offensive tackle recruiting territory in this class. And Deacon Schmidt, you know, I believe he just visited Colorado. I think that Prime and the Buffs are really trying to start attempting to keep him home. He's got a pretty heated process. Deacon Schmidt, to me, is maybe the OV guy this weekend that needs a spotlight relative to positional value at a premium in this class, but maybe will be under discussed. I will say I would be remiss if I didn't mention real quick that Matthew Nelson is going to be back on campus. I will expand on him a little bit more, but the edge rusher in the 2026 cycle, I will talk about him at the back end of the show, but he is back in Norman in the span of like a week. So that means something.
Notable. Yeah, no doubt. No, I mean, the things that stand out to me there from some of the names you rattled off, obviously positions of need / emphasis. You know, we talk a lot about wide receivers. We talk about Gross and Pettit, and then obviously corner and tight end and offensive tackle potentially. These are all positions that you want to see Oklahoma add, you know, in this 26 cycle sooner rather than later. And then also, I mean, hard not to notice, I mean, a couple of guys from Florida. You mentioned Nelson. He's Arkansas. Like, you know, kind of these SEC footprint states continuing to add guys from there if they can do it is notable. And that's something that sticks out to me certainly too. So
and there's a few more. Yeah, there's a few more from the Sunshine State on there, you know?
Yeah, right. So the full list on Sooners Illustrated, it's a really impressive, you know, whenever Collin put up, and it's updating regularly as we get, you know, into the actual weekend. You kind of perusing, you're like, a lot of talent on here. And Ja'Cory Smith will be here as well, the committed linebacker. So that'll help, you know, have a guy who's in the boat be around. So it's a good group, and some names to know there that will be in town this weekend. Big weekend now, so we'll talk about it coming out of it. There'll be a lot of coverage on Sooners Illustrated over the next, you know, you got to let the dust settle a little bit, but early next week, I'm sure, and then we'll get into it on the show next week how it went, right? So good stuff as always.
Yes, sir.
Before we go, I did want to go ahead and give you a chance. You've been at the first 2 Brent Venables camps, staying busy. You're at TCU right now. It's that time of year for Collin. He's bounced around to camps all over the place. I usually join you, different things going on. Haven't been able to get at the first 2. There's a couple more this week, hoping to join you out there for those. But from the first two, just anything that I guess stuck out to you, whether it's a new offer that went out, just a guy who caught your eye, whatever direction you want to take it. I figured I'd give you the opportunity from the first two camps, one yesterday and one whenever that was, Sunday last weekend.
I love Josh being humble here on the show, saying, I got a couple things going on, and he's casually covering the NBA finals and all this other stuff. You know, Callaway found a way to work me into his schedule as I climb from campus to campus down here in the South Central.
You're growing way more than me, I promise.
Hopefully the fans out there are able to keep up with Josh's work as well on the basketball side, because he's been killing it with the NBA stuff. I believe that the OU staff has been,
night, but we pressed.
Yeah, I didn't think we were going there, but that's your call. You're the Thunder guy.
It's on everyone's mind. Anyone tune in, I feel bad that I shouldn't have done that, because anyone tuned into this show right now is probably trying to get their mind off of what happened at the Paycom Center last night, and I just brought it back up. So I apologize, and we'll move on. We'll pretend it didn't happen.
Yeah, if you're going to yell at someone on the show, yell at Josh. I was going to avoid that topic entirely. So yell at the dude that's like getting the 5-star meals up there in the press box, because he made that choice. Jokes aside, first two camps have been fun. I mean, look, this is one of my favorite times of the year.
Yeah.
For more than just OV season. I've now been to Oklahoma twice, SMU. Obviously, I'm here at TCU, having a great time, hanging out with the great staffers coming in and out of the pod. Shout out to them. I'll be at UNT. I think I'm going up to Tulsa as well, so I'm pretty fired up. But like, I love camp season, man. We build a nice base of sunburn to get me through the summer, like callus the body.
Oh yeah.
But then camp season for me is like OVs is the reality TV side, and that's great. That's what pays the bills. But the evaluation side of camp season is a blast. Getting to know a lot of these younger guys on the way up, getting ahead of the cycles, and I'll get there in a second. The more interesting stuff for the average fan. I mentioned Matthew Nelson, 2026 edge rusher out of the state of Arkansas from Bryant, which is, I believe, where Ja'Cory Smith transferred to, if I remember correctly. Josh, you may have to call me on that, because I can't open too many more tabs on my hotspot here.
Yes. Yeah.
Boom. Okay, so Ja'Cory is someone in the ear of Matthew Nelson. This is someone who at 6'5", 215 pounds, 210 pounds, was a 300-meter hurdler out there in Arkansas. I'm a sucker for edge rushers that participate in hurdles. Max Granville, for example, last cycle was near and dear to my heart. And
it's a very specific niche.
Yeah, dude, you know what? If you're going to do this for a living, brother, you got to be a little bit of a sicko. And so Matthew Nelson is one that if you're out there and you're a sicko, you know, because Oklahoma's recruiting him a few lower level power 4 to higher level G5, like Cincinnati and Tulane. They're in the mix here. So he showed up for the first time at OU for camp number 1. Did some work with Miguel Chavis. You've been out there, Josh. You know the drill. And Chavis will bring his guys over like in the middle of the field, and they will just work the 2 or 3 of them with Chavis on working the hands or whatever. So Nelson got that treatment and checked out before one-on-one started, got his work in, but then obviously kind of was able to, by way of the rules, go on an unofficial visit afterwards, tour the facility, all that good stuff. So that goes well. And then he is headed back this weekend. So first 2 trips in the matter of a few days. And it's one where I believe originally he was scheduled to be there on the back end of June 20th. He ended up flipping that and moving it up. He was at camp. I thought he looked pretty solid. This feels like using camp to help in the midst of closing territory. You know what I mean? So that wasn't nothing in my eyes. I think that basically ended up being a valuable visit to help further the momentum within this recruitment. And I think that off the heels of camp 1 with Nelson, you are using that as the foundation ahead of the OV this weekend.
Yeah.
The other big name I was going to bring up here, anytime you talk to college staffers, on-field guys, personnel guys, doesn't really matter. When you ask them about class of 2027 quarterback Peyton Houston, they all adore this guy, love him. And it's not hard to see why, obviously. Josh, you've seen him before.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the most jump out of the hands with the ball you will find across the country, makes ripping a football look like a Sunday afternoon just easy. And the work that he was putting in out there in camp number 2 in Norman was very impressive. Some of the positional stuff that I was watching him go through, like some of the movement skills, it's all there. But I really like this guy's temperament because he's obviously a competitor. But I was talking about this with some coaches at one of the mega camps I was out at, not the OU one, but a different one. And we were just talking about how, sometimes the loudest guy in the room isn't the smartest or most qualified. And Peyton Houston's just kind of the guy that embraces the work. He shows up, whatever you tell him to do, he's going to do it. He's going to enjoy it. He's never really going to bark at anybody or what have you. If he makes a ridiculous pass in one-on-one stuff, he's getting to the back of the line and pretty much acting like he's been there, done that before. And I think you kind of have to love that when you're recruiting quarterbacks these days. And he shows up. He's working closely with Ben Arbuckle. This is a recruitment that I think we're getting ready to talk a lot more about, especially as we get into July and August, because we talk about quarterback dominoes all the time, and for good reason. All of these guys are dependent upon each other. One decision directly impacts another. Well, I won't dive into all the specifics now. It's a topic for another day, but there is activity going on in 2027 as we go through camp season, where guys in that class are getting new offers and they're gaining new interest and they're starting to identify potential destinations. And I think in the midst of all that and all these boards across the country forming, Oklahoma has still said time and again, Peyton Houston, this is it. You're our guy.
Yeah.
I mean, we're really not recruiting anybody else. And that was reiterated to a degree at camp the other day. So
yeah, well, that's what I was going to ask.
On.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. And you basically just answered it. Was, obviously we've talked about Peyton going back, a few OCs now. Obviously going back to Jeff Lebby, and certainly obviously last year with when Seth was the guy, and now with Ben Arbuckle. So you basically just answered it. But it sounds like the different offensive coordinators, different offensive regimes, whatever, it hasn't changed anything. Peyton Houston has kind of remained their guy in 27. It sounds like. Yeah.
And that's in the midst of other programs in his recruitment going out and identifying and recruiting other talents at the position. So, for example, Texas is sending out a new offer to Kavian Bryant in the 27 cycle. They're linked to Gunnar Rivers, the son of Phillip Rivers, which, by the way, that'll make you feel old, huh? And then
every other year thing with the Rivers family until we're all old and gray.
I believe he has 3 sons, so we're just getting started, folks.
Yeah.
And then you've got LSU, and I've said it before on the show, LSU kind of holds the keys to the entire 2027 quarterback cycle across the names in their state. 3 elite players, including Peyton Houston and Colton Nussmeier, the younger brother of current starting quarterback Garrett Nussmeier. They get the pick of the litter, and that decision will directly impact everyone else. Obviously, the 2 situations I just mentioned, and then activity elsewhere, it continues to kind of show you Peyton Houston's involved in a lot of these boards, but Oklahoma's just stayed solid the whole way through. And I think that not only means something to Oklahoma, I think that means something to Peyton as well. And I mentioned earlier, man, sometimes in recruiting, you're just looking for situations you can capitalize on. I don't want to get too far ahead of the skis, but it just felt like out there at camp, it was a reiteration of the fact that like this feels like a situation where Oklahoma could potentially capitalize on a situation and get quote unquote their guy in that class.
No doubt about it. Yeah, we saw Peyton last year, and obviously, he was really young then. He's still young now. Just going into his junior season, wildly talented. Obviously, not that I'm breaking any news there, but he was one that stood out. And when we're watching guys like Jayden O'Neal last year, and other guys who have since landed at other Power 5 programs, he fit right in despite being on the younger side. Obviously, Kevin Sperry in the past been at these camps, so he's he's really talented, and he's a fun guy to watch. And I was a little jealous that he was there throwing, because he's a fun guy to watch, and you're like, yeah, that kid has got a chance to be really good. And so a name that we've talked about a lot, but like you said, we're probably going to talk about a lot more over the next year plus or so.
Yeah, man. This is like my third or fourth time seeing him in person, and every time I'm like, dude, this is someone I'm going to have to be discussing heavily for years to come. Now, the last point I will make as we get out of here, been very cool to watch this new front office staff go to work and directly
Jim Nagy out there at these camps, right? Yeah.
He's not just out there, man. He is hovering over these drills and pulling guys aside, and he's making calls. And you're watching Nagy, Drew Hill hanging around still and being that guy, and Charlie Parkinson and Cale Pearson. Like, all these guys are moving around. Josh, you can attest to this. The past few camps that we've covered, they weren't having guys run 40s or do broad jumps. That's a thing now. And
really interesting.
That's again, it's like they're not just making these hires to watch tape. There's going to be a process of getting verifieds and evaluating and gathering hard data.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I think, whenever they hired Jim, and we've talked about it, and I think a lot of fans kind of wondered how involved would he really be in high school recruiting. Obviously, current roster, portal, obviously, making the right kind of, for lack of a better term, negotiations with guys on NIL and stuff like that. But clearly, it's, we're just getting going. It's the first few months for him, but very involved, obviously. He's out at camps having guys run 40s. He's in it. He's in the trenches here, which is, I think, a cool thing for you fan, and good to hear.
And then it's like there's intent behind it, because Nagy and that whole staff, they're watching these guys. They've got the clipboards out and everything, and they're making a ton of offers. Like, you're scrolling through the timeline, and a lot of these guys in that staff, Nagy, Pearson, Hill, Parkinson, Lynn, a lot of these new hires that they're still making, they're getting tagged in these new offers because they're kind of the major reason why.
Right.
And so that has been, I could go down any number of rabbit holes about like 2027 or 2028 players that have been gaining offers in camp season. That doesn't do any of us any good right now. I do think, though, that it is interesting to know that, like, those hires that have been made, the number of them already kind of providing an impact and paying off to a degree as the wild world of recruiting plays out before their eyes.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Still 2 more to go. They're both this week. The schedule this year, we've talked about a couple times, very odd compared to previous years. Thursday, Friday, I think. Is that right? I'm pretty sure that's right. Thursday, Friday.
Yes.
This week. Collin will be back out at those. Like I said, I'd like to join him. I think I should be able to, at the very least on Thursday. And so we'll have more, I'm sure, takeaways and stuff coming out of those.
Well, yeah, because like Thunder and 5, right? That'll get you there. In theory.
Yeah. Game 4 in Indy. The NBA Finals takes forever. The games are so spread out. Game 4 in Indy is on Friday night. So, but we're on to game 2. We're locked in on game 2 on Sunday night. But
now they're going to yell at me if I jinxed it. You know what I mean? I'm trying to help you out.
Thunder and 5 is still in play. I think that's it. Back next week. We'll do James and Tom. Should be able to get that in on Monday. Wrap up some other football stuff. We're in kind of full blown off season mode now. Obviously, with Diamond Sports finished up, and we're shifting deeper into June. So start to ramp up, kind of looking ahead to to this upcoming season more and more. And we'll be back with Collin later next week. Like I said, that might be Wednesday. CK and I'll have to plan it out. We'll get the camps on Thursday, Friday. So we'll figure that out. But maybe Wednesday, but at some point we'll be with you. And like we said, also, we're on Bowe Bentley watch after this weekend as well. So keep an eye out for news and movement there, both on Sooners Illustrated, Oakland.247sports.com, as well as here on the YouTube channel, the podcast feed, if we get some breaking news there at some point in the near future. Collin, wear some sunscreen. Get ready. Are you inside at TCU or no? Is it just at M&G? Is that where you are?
It's a multi-station camp. Some guys are in the indoor, some guys are down on the field, some guys are on the practice field.
Gotcha.
A lot of steps. You would know more than anyone. That staircase in the back end of the tunnel to go up. A lot of work in that staircase today.
Look for my you can look for my stool that I left there after the Armed Forces Bowl. If you happen to stumble upon a stool,
I will. You know what?
All time if you found it. It's got blue. You'll know it's mine because it has blue crap on it from BYU's wet field 2 years ago. That just
we're starting session 2 here in about a half hour. I'm gonna march over there to the media section where you and I were, and I'm gonna see if it's in there. If it's in there, it's debuting on the pod next week.
It was in the post game room is where I left it. They may have moved it since then. That was 6 months ago. But so if you stumble upon it,
the team meeting room is right on the other side of this kitchenette.
All right. So, all right.
Quick pivot here, and then we're going hunting. Since I have about half hour, and it seems like I'm pretty much posted up, go pursue your dreams out there, folks. This weekend, I am realizing a dream. Josh, you will appreciate this. I will be turning the ripe age of 29 this weekend. And I'm not a birthday guy, so I wouldn't even been saying it. But at the age of 29, I'm realizing a long childhood dream almost. If you see me in the lazy river in right field of the Frisco Rough Riders ballpark this weekend, and I am not of current planet, just let me do my thing because I'm living the dream here in a few days. You're going to see me.
That 30 number is approaching rapidly, and I've thought
we're staring down we're staring down dirty 30 right now. You know,
what's the weather we're working with this weekend? What kind of weather are we working with? Hot.
So it's hot right now. I can tell you that. I'm getting ready to go brave the sun again here in a little bit. We are storm expected this weekend, but I have been checking the weather app arguably every hour, and rain go away on Sunday evening, because if that takes away my opportunity at being in a lazy river in a ball field, I will hunt Mother Nature down.
How does that work? You bring like trunks with you? How does that work?
I don't know. That's my first time. This is a dream. I can't say I have a plan.
It's like the pool at the Arizona Diamondbacks ballpark. I've always kind of wondered, like, do those people change, or is that just what they wore to the game? It's always kind of an interesting wrinkle there. You have to let me know.
We're going to learn. We're going to learn together.
We'll get a report.
Yeah, I was about to say, if we have enough time to recap, we will. We'll be able to like trickle into NBA Finals / Lazy River Logistics recap here on the show.
Sounds like an all-timer already. Big weekend coming up. Lots of visit intel at Sooners Illustrated. Again, subscribe. Oakland247sports.com. Back next week.
And shout out,
as always.
Shout out TCU, by the way. Shout out to the TCU staff.
The 2 staffers who just totally rolled with it. That was awesome. We'll next year, this same camp, you might have to try and do this exact same thing and see if we can get them on a second time. We'll make it
next year. We'll see if they remember me and I can post up in their office and just have them join the pod. We'll get like a panel going, you know.
We'll get their input on 2027 quarterback recruiting. See what they think.
They're way more enjoyable people than the randos who kept walking behind me at AT&T Stadium like I was a tourist attraction. You know what I mean?
It's like, oh, what is that? Whenever we gotta get out of here. Whenever James and I did the instant reaction at the Women's College World Series, do yourself a favor, go watch that if you haven't already. Obviously, it's old news, but in the first 20, 30 seconds, some people walk in the background and realize they're on camera, and then just like they saw a ghost, basically, and they just duck out of the frame. I was really funny watching it back because I didn't notice it in real time until I was watching it back, editing it. That it's okay. The camera, it's okay. It's no big deal. Don't be afraid of the camera. It's fine.
It's funny how they embrace the big screen, the Jumbotron,
100%.
but a regular camera, totally different ballgame for whatever reason.
Nightmare.
Yeah.
I think that's actually it. We'll let you go. We'll let you get back to it. We'll be back next week with Tom and James. Collin and I will rendezvous later in the week. And again, we're on Bowe Bentley Watch. So be sure to stay plugged in to Sooners Illustrated for all the latest there. Coming out of the big weekend. For Collin Kennedy, I'm Josh Callaway signing off for now. We'll see you next time right back here on Sooners Illustrated.